Everybody come and see. I say come and hear. I don't carry and come. Better information, superb advertisement. We no get it right far. Oh, to get update and get informed. Oh, come to Celestial Half Hour. Celestial Half Hour TV. Now we be the best information carrier.
Call warning stridently in the lead up to the 2023 election cycle. Long before I ever met Peter Obi or even began to speak for his presidential campaign, I warned that Buhari had effectively destroyed Nigeria and that we would have to reimagine a new country, and whoever was going to have to lead in 2023 had to be someone who had to be willing to take a walk away from the Buhari ruination, reimagine the country, repurpose its people, and get them to begin to pull in a different direction. I wasn't shy about making clear that only a revolution could save Nigeria. And I was also clear in explaining to all who cared to listen at the time that that revolution needn't be violent, that we could do it using the electoral path. I recall spending time, a lot of time, helping people understand the need to register to vote. Quite a lot of organizations and persons were involved. TV stations, even yourself, I remember, everybody got on the bandwagon. We even bought into the illusion being sold by INEC, Okoye, and Yakubu. We believed that we could trust the electoral system, and the people were energized. People registered to vote in record numbers. You and I know what has transpired since then. It is an open secret that the ballot was grabbed, it was snatched, it was grabbed, but they ran, but apparently they've now crashed with it. So when you ask where we are, we're in a place where we already warned before the election that we were heading. It didn't take Tinubu to destroy Nigeria. It took all of us, but Buhari was particularly effective in the ruination of Nigeria. If he had been set the task of destroying Nigeria, he couldn't have done a better job. He weaponized ethnic bigotry, religious bigotry. Corruption is an insult to the English language to call what we witnessed during the years of Buhari corruption. It wasn't corruption. It was the first time in Nigeria where impunity became a governance principle.
I thought people said that was during Jonathan.
No. Please. I recall that in February 2015, a piece that I had written and almost every newspaper house in Nigeria had turned down. It was eventually published by Guardian on Sunday, February 2015. I think it must have been February 15 or something. I can't remember now. And I called it, "Do Not Die in Their War." I made clear, without any apologies to anybody, that Buhari wasn't going to be any change. If anything, it would be worse. And I called attention to all the characters surrounding Buhari to make it very clear that even if you believe in the illusion of a Saint Buhari of Daura, you could not possibly have believed in the sainthood of the many thieves that were around him. I made this clear at the time. Not that Jonathan made it easy for anyone to have spoken for him, and I certainly did not. If we're comparing the two, you can only be a study in comparative failure. Because if Jonathan had been an effective president, we would not have had a situation where a man who left office as president and came back after 30 years without even having the capacity to get a school certificate. Even his dairy farm, with all the subsidies the rich in Nigeria enjoy, never expanded beyond what it was. He didn't write a single book. And then that became the one that was packaged as Messiah for everybody to buy into an illusion. I didn't buy into that illusion, and I warned everybody at the time. But that is not to excuse the failings of Jonathan himself. Jonathan actually prepared the ground for the failure that became Buhari. But the reality is that whoever had come after Buhari would have had to reimagine Nigeria because Buhari had already effectively destroyed Nigeria.
So would you accept that the ruination of Nigeria did not start under Buhari?
Oh, the ruination of Nigeria was always part and parcel of the seed of his making. Nigeria was always found on multiple lies. And those lies were always going to eventually consume it if we never found the grace to confront those lies with truth. We tell ourselves too many lies in Nigeria, and until we come to the point where we admit to ourselves that these are lies that we have normalized, internalized, and almost defied as truths. You say no victor, no vanquished. Who is telling who that lie? Even the foundation of Nigeria is very foundation. There are too many lies in there. The Nigerian has never been a citizen. He has only ever engaged the Nigerian state either as a member of one tribe or member of a religion or a member of a family or a member of a social order. There is no identity for who the Nigerian is. You can't take a Nigerian from anywhere and say that this is the Nigerian regardless of his ethnicity, his religion, his state of origin. There is no such Nigerian. You know who a Ghanaian is, you know who an American is, but who is the Nigerian? There are more Liverpool Football Club supporters in Nigeria than Nigerians. That is a fact. Think about it.
Okay, so let's move to today.
Okay.
As at today, we know what has happened under President Jonathan. We know what has happened under President Buhari. We're now in the era of President Tinubu.
The last horseman of the apocalypse. That is what it is.
Okay, so that's the way you would want to describe it. Some members of the Labour Party and some people who have described themselves as obedient have said President Tinubu is not their president.
Well, I am first and first a creature of law. I am by training also a lawyer. Whether I like it or not, Bola, or let me rephrase that, the man known as Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I forgot to add Adekunle, he is the president of Nigeria. I may like that, I may not like it, whether the legal order was subverted to bring about that fait accompli, whether I believe that they've effectively destroyed Nigeria to bring it about, it does not matter.
So you're a Nigerian?
I'm a Nigerian.
And he is the president
He is the president of Nigeria.
He is your president?
Unfortunately so.
Okay, so that's cleared. So now your president then...
Unfortunately.
Yeah, your president
yes.
has created a situation where, unlike any other president in the history of Nigeria, people are crying, we're starving, we're hungry.
Good.
What would you be saying to him if he was listening now?
Why would I be saying anything to him? I shouldn't. Look, you know, there is this error that we make as a collective. We almost constantly, always excuse our situation. We excuse the failings, quote and unquote, of our rulers on incapacity, on mistakes, we find multiple excuses. What we never seem to understand is that they are doing exactly what they set out to do. So how do I tell a man who knew beforehand the exact repercussion of the actions and inactions that he had decided consciously to do, to carry out? A man came to power, in my own opinion, fraudulently so, and he then proceeded on the very first day of his stay in office to say subsidy is gone. That singular pronouncement destroyed the savings and well-being of at least about 98% of Nigerians.
But this was the promise of all the other candidates.
But they did say that each person also set aside what program they would put in place either before or after doing so. Since that was done in May, what has happened? What has happened to the national minimum wage bill that was signed? Which states? How many states are implementing it? What has happened to the price of petroleum products? What has happened to the price of electricity? What has happened with security? Let me explain something to you, Ebon. In northern Nigeria, poverty has always been part and parcel of the social fabric. But food poverty was never a thing, because no matter how poor the people were, they could grow their food. They could stay in their villages. They were safe. So even though they might not have a kobo to their names, they had food on their table. They could eat. They could live with a roof over their heads. What has happened? On Buhari's watch, superintended again by the one who has now succeeded him, northern Nigeria has become essentially a theater of war because of illegal mining. And the illegal miners work under the licenses of different warlords whom you and I will call bandits. Bandits are carrying sophisticated arms. All manner of mineral resources are being mined in northern Nigeria, and there are more than sufficient evidences of this in the public space.
So how do you feel when you...
Never pay for Wi-Fi again. InstaBridge is a free app with 20 million Wi-Fi passwords all over the world. With over 200 million downloads already, don't wait. Download InstaBridge today and get Wi-Fi wherever you are, whenever you want it, entirely for free.
You realize that the governor that superintended over Zamfara State, where there are so many bandits and where there are so many illegal miners, is now the Minister of Defense.
Put it this way, to look at any part of Nigeria or look to any one of the many functionaries of the Nigerian state and then be outraged, as I am when I look at someone like Matawale or whatever that one calls his name, being the one, even bandit says that he's one of them. That's the one that is busy, they're calling the Minister of Defense. When you look at it, it's always very easy to be outraged by the insanities that we have normalized in our country. But I have found that it would only be a sense of selective outrage that will lead me to look at Matawale and be angry. Who am I supposed to look at, from the president to the Senate president? To who am I supposed to look at within the Nigerian governing establishment and find some inspiration for hope? Who?
What do you have against the Senate president, by the way?
How many charges was it that he had with the EFCC before he became canonized by the Buhari government? Isn't that the same man that was being chased into the government house in his former state? Look, he is no better or worse than any one of the other ones. Take any one of the senators. I don't believe they are any better or worse than he is. He's just primus inter pares. They are all the same. Bar one or two, maybe, because I don't really know how you expect anything good to emerge from this sick system that we have. It's very easy to point fingers at Tinubu, Akpabio. Those are the primary examples of the society that we have managed to evolve. But are you going to look at the clergy and find anything better, really? Are you going to look, whether it's the Muslim cleric, the Christian clerics, where are you going to look at?
So when you look at the entire system and you say that the entire system is fraudulent, is decadent, is almost near what somebody I know, but I won't mention his name, who's a politician, he said many years ago that the case of Nigeria is hopeless. Are you at that point where you think...
No, I don't believe Nigeria's case is hopeless. No. The system is hopeless. You cannot reform our existing system is beyond redemption. I actually believe that any true lover of Nigeria should be sat somewhere as a collective making plans for the day after. This system is already dead. We are just trapped in a death spiral. I don't know how long it's going to take. Even the Americans, all of them are busy gaming the end of our country. The sick thing about our situation is that people are sat in Washington, D.C., and God knows how many think tanks around the world, and they are gaming our situation, and they've made conclusions that our country will collapse by 2030. And stuff that they had predicted are already happening, and we are seeing them happening. And we are sat like victims on the Titanic. We are rearranging deck chairs.
So Nigeria is not in a hopeless state.
If we, as a collective, find the grace to confront the truth of the hopelessness of our existing governance systems and structures, if we find the grace to tell ourselves that each and every one of us looking in our mirrors in the morning are just as guilty as the ones we have set over ourselves, because what we tolerate is what becomes the culture. We have tolerated these, we've become part and parcel of it. We are also guilty. I'm not exempting myself. I have my own blame in this. There are no saints and sinners here. Our situation has gone beyond the place of saints and sinners. We are all, to varying degrees, guilty. We've made all form of horrible compromises, all of us. But if we believe for 1 second that we can continue on our current trajectories without urgent turnaround, the reality is that even those ruining Nigeria whilst pretending to rule it have already concluded, even as the American and British sponsors have concluded, that Nigeria will die the way it's going. And they are making plans for the day after. We are the ones who have failed to make plans for the day after. There is no single person, and I say this without equivocation, who you may deem a member of the Nigerian elite who does not carry a second passport or have some form of residency in a foreign country. They've popularized buying up citizenship of one tiny island somewhere or the other. They have the level of capital flight out of Nigeria will tell you, with the way this current government is superintending the economy of Nigeria, that we've entered the end game. They have gamed that Nigeria is dead. We are the ones, the victims, who have failed to understand that when Nigeria collapses without us having planned for the day after, we are the ones who will be the victims.
So which of the islands have you got their passport?
I have never carried a second passport in my life. I do not have the residency of any other country aside from Nigeria. As I speak with you, the only reason I cannot claim that I do not have a foreign account is because I had to open one in 2010 when I was trying to buy a car in America, and I have less than $100 in it. I have no foreign property anywhere. With Nigeria, I'm all lean.
Okay.
I'm not going anywhere.
Protest. Yeah.
Protests happened from the 1st of August. I believe it ended on the 10th.
Yes.
This government increased the fuel price instead of decreasing it. Does that seem like people who listen? This government is deaf and dumb. Deliberately so, because it does not accord with the plan of this government to listen to the victims who believe themselves to be citizens.
So you're one of those that believe that this government does not care about the people.
As it, look, who steals power to care for those from whom it has stolen their inalienable right of sovereignty? Who does that?
No.
Remember that when you asked if there was hope or if our situation was hopeless, I made clear that the one thing that is required is the courage to confront the truth, that too many lies undergird the Nigerian state. And the Constitution is one of them. The 1999 Constitution, otherwise known as Decree 24 of 1999, is a fraud. Ab initio, it is a fraud. When the military took power in 1966, there was a constitution. That was the last constitution that the Nigerian people gave to themselves. After that constitution, what you have found a succession of frauds. The 1979 constitution, to a lesser extent, because at least Obasanjo pretended to listen to the Constituent Assembly until he then imposed the will of the Supreme Military Council on the recommendations of the Constituent Assembly. So what the Constituent Assembly recommended was way different from what the 1979 Constitution became. And to make matters worse, the 1999 fraud built on the original fraud of 1979. So what you had were a bunch of men and picked essentially by the military who did the best they could within the terms of reference they were given to write a constitution, and then they labeled it "We the People." Where they found the people that they were on whose behalf they were speaking, and now what they did is any different from what the British did when they were busy signing all kinds of fraudulent treaties, I don't know. So what has happened is that Nigerians have exchanged one form of slavery for another. Because if you say "we the people," it would mean that the people have sat down and agreed that the original agreement that was broken in 1966, which had 4 regions, have now become 36 states, which has now become 37 by the grace of the Supreme Court and Samani and Co. at the PEP-T. So now you have 37 states of Nigeria, thanks to the fraudulence of everybody involved in their creation. So how do you reform a fraud? We all need to admit to ourselves that we are far away from the beginnings of the country that our fathers pretended to found. We have to tell ourselves that we can't be afraid of sitting down together to tell ourselves the truth. Over the years, there have been some measure of consensus that have been reached across the divide. There is this basic understanding in Nigeria today that we have 6 zones. Treat those zones as regions, broadly. I don't have a monopoly of knowledge. There are other people who have suggested 8. Bring these different ideas to the table. Some people are saying that take the existing states and allow them to be able to regionalize. Whatever you need to do, do it.
Well, you have a situation where people are saying there's this allegation. Those who are in the National Assembly are comfortable. They're making so much money. There is no way they will remove themselves from
you see,
that
this is
office by allowing things to happen.
this is where we come back to where we started this conversation. I already told you, I wasn't shy about saying it. I said this system is not reformable. Nigeria will either descend into chaos. The descent into chaos has already begun. We're seeing it. Our enemies have planned for it. If we are not careful, in fact, there is no care. Look, the government has lost control of its territory. That's why a Clergy or whatever his name is making video. You go to TikTok, you find different bandits sharing money. This bandit is doing giveaway, but it is Yele Sowore you are arresting because he says revolution. So
how do you stop this trajectory of this moving downward spiral into what you say will lead to chaos? How do you stop it?
Let me start by saying this. For 9 years, I've been in the public space, and everything I have warned every one of us would happen have happened. I challenge anyone to point at a single thing I've told us as a collective would happen to us that hasn't happened to us. So I'm done with telling us what will happen, unless when I'm asked, as you've asked me. What I'm more interested in is what we can do. And what we can do, as unpalatable as it might be for our people, they must understand this. The French word, revolver, it means to turn around. It means turn around. That is the root word for revolution. If we say we don't like our trajectories, trajectory meaning a movement of direction, that we're heading either towards a cliff or a wall, then we have to turn around. That is a revolution. Whether that revolution is by means of the peaceful one that the like of me has preached consistently, or the violent ones that are already taking place all over our country, because I have no doubt about it. What you call Islamic militants sometimes are in actual fact forms of revolution. Revolutions happen in concentric circles. If they didn't have legitimacy amongst the indigenous communities, they would not have grown. They are not spirits.
So
the militants in the Niger Delta is a form of revolution as well. So
if we're in a situation where it's obvious that we're doing a downward spiral, how far down the abyss would we go before we realize that we can't go any further?
What has kept Nigeria together have been three, in my own view, three broad lies. One, religion. Religion came to Nigeria to find its true meaning. If you look for the root of the word itself, religion, it comes from Latin, religio, or Old French, religare. It means to bind. That's to tie something together. Religion ties the imagination of men, and it tells them how to think and where to think. There is nothing intrinsically or inherently wrong with religion. But when it is aligned with poverty and then aligned with ignorance, what you find is that it becomes almost impossible to reach the person who has been so afflicted. That is what has happened to the Nigerian. So we've gotten to the point now where we, as a people, whoever calls himself leader in any way or form in Nigeria, whether you are in the news sector, whether you are in any form of profession, if you haven't gamed Nigeria has been dead, you now have to sit down and start thinking, what do we do with tomorrow? Because if you're saying how far down are we, we're actually really, really deep down. It's gotten so bad that the illusion that had kept peace in Nigeria, which had kept northern Nigeria supine since 1986-87, I think I mentioned this at my intervention at your event in Abuja the other day. The northern part of Nigeria had never been part of a conversation for change in Nigeria. Never. Since 1986-87, since after the SAP riot. Now, all of a sudden, thanks to the work of the likes of Bello Galadanchi, thanks to the works of the likes of Yele Sowore, thanks to the last electoral cycle, a lot of people have better information, and hunger has become the chief recruitment officer. The last protest was essentially about hunger. Hunger is a universal language, so the people are ready. It is the leadership that needs to align its thoughts and methodologies before if we crash.
Yeah.
So if the people are more aroused by ethnic hatred, if they are more focused on religious bigotry, if they are fine with being distracted by the occasional handout of spaghetti at election time,
or rice, case may be,
I can scream and screech from now till kingdom come. And that is why I have come to the point in my life. I lost a dear friend recently. May God rest his soul. But it has taught me a lesson. All of us are transient beings. We're here today, and we may be gone tomorrow. So I'm not going to waste whatever is left of my life trying to tell somebody who is awake to wake up. Yorùbá will say, ẹni tó sùn là ń jí, ẹnìkan ò kì í bá wọn jí apirọrọ. It is the man who is sleeping that you arouse. You don't awaken the man pretending to be asleep. Am I the one who has to tell these religious traders that the country is collapsing around their ears and they should tell their congregation? They could march on the street and be praying nonsensical prayers, but they cannot speak in support of the right of citizens to protest. How many pastors? Am I the one who will tell them that? Am I the one who will tell the imams who went to Aso Rock and the lesser imams were given, the lesser clerics were given $10,000 and the bigger ones were given 20? Am I the one who will tell them to stop lying to the victims of their excesses? If I'm working to awaken the people to find common purposes, and those who are called in the name of God are busy profiting from the misery of the people and being paid off to be silent, to the point where clerics have become distribution point for palliatives. So I cannot waste my life. In actual fact, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a piece, I do not write for you. What was I saying? I'm not speaking or writing for this generation anymore. It's a waste of time. But I am playing my own role. What I have discerned as my purpose for living, I am doing it. History would absolve me. And coming generations will either read of my work or find things that I have said, and they will remember there was a sane one amongst them, even though he was the one they deemed insane. But my conscience is clear. I go into my bed, I'm asleep within 2 minutes, Egbon. Within 2 minutes, I'm sleeping. Regardless of what the storms might be, my conscience is clear.
Okay. So on that note, we're going to have to take a break. But before I go, let me ask you this very quick question.
All right, sir.
Because we're going to go into the details of it. Some people said that President Tinubu is definitely the wrong person to have as the president of Nigeria at this point.
Most definitely.
And some people said definitely the candidate that you supported in the last election, Mr. Peter Obi, is not a messiah.
He's definitely not.
So why did you support him?
Why do we need a messiah?
So why did you support him?
He was the best candidate in the race. He was the candidate, he was the very best candidate by a country mile. There was no other candidate in the race that could have united Nigeria and set it on the trajectory to what would have been considered a peaceful revolution. He would have turned this country around without look.
So if Peter Obi was 2027, 2031, and
no. I am a creature of reason. In 2022, leading into 2023, Peter Obi was the best candidate in the race. If the election would hold tomorrow, I'll still vote for Peter Gregory Obi on the basis of the objective realities. That is still the person for whom I'd vote.
Everybody come and see. As they come and hear, I don't carry and come. Better information, superb advertisement. We no get it right far. Oh, to get update and get informed. Oh, come to Celestial Half Hour. Celestial Half Hour TV. Now we be the best information carrier.
Bùlẹ̀ ń báyé lọ nítorí ambition èèyàn kan, nítorí ìjẹkújẹ àwọn èèyàn tí ojú kéékèèké lọ, ẹni tẹ́bi ń para wá gbé orò á lọ máa fi orò nítorí ìjẹkújẹ táwọn kan máa jẹ. Ẹ̀ẹ̀kan ní iye ọdẹ àfìfìlà pé rìn níjọ́ tó bá ti kọ́kọ́ ṣe náà ló níyì. Orò tẹ́ gbé láti fi gbé orò Jídé Sanwó-Olú wọlé, ẹ tún fẹ́ gbé pé káwọn èèyàn gbọ́dọ̀ fẹ̀hónú wọn hàn. Èmi ò ní káwọn èèyàn jáde kí wọ́n lọ máa jà. Àwọn Nigerians ò dẹ̀ fìgbà kan jáde kán lọ báyàn kan jàrí. Èmi ò rí ibi tí wọ́n ti organize protest ní Nàìjíríà téèyàn kan mú weapon jáde lérí. Látàárọ̀ ọjọ́ ìjọba náà ló máa kó tọ́ọ̀gì wá, ìjọba náà ló máa kó sójà wá, ìjọba náà ló máa ń pa aráàlú nítorí pé ẹ̀fẹ́ mọ bẹ́ẹ̀ fẹ́ pa wá lẹ́nu mọ́ àgbọ̀dọ̀ sọ̀rọ̀. Bá ti ẹ̀jọ́ ló ń dùn pàpà níbi tẹ́ ẹ bá lé ayé dé tẹ́ ẹ bàlújẹ́ dé béèyàn ò tiẹ̀ fẹ́ jáde béèyàn ò fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ ṣé ẹ fún yàn lẹ́nu ọ̀rọ̀ ni ṣé lè tẹ̀ ń ṣe yìí ṣáyé lè tẹ̀ ń ṣe yìí náà. Ọmọ tálítà ò lè jẹun ẹ̀mẹ́ta lójúmọ́ mọ́, ẹ mú ogbó ọmọ ọlọ́mọ ẹ sọ wọ́n dẹrú, ẹ wá máràlú ẹ sọ wọ́n dọ̀tá ara wọn. Ọmọ Ìgbò ni, yanmirin ni, ayé ìgbà kan Fúlàní ni. Kí ló dé ẹ̀yin pásítọ̀ ẹ̀dẹ̀ ń wòran ẹ dákẹ́ gbogbo yín wá di olóró dé. Ẹ̀yin imam ojú ti ẹ̀ tì yín torí ń tẹ́ máa jẹ ẹ̀rántí ọjọ́ àti sùnmọ́ ìkankan nu yín ò rí nǹkan kan sọ. Àtijàgbé mọ́ kèfèrí à ń lé ìpọ́nrí kú káàkiri olóòlù ò gbọ́dọ̀ jáde níbolẹ̀ wà ń sìn tó tán. Àsìkò yìí àwọn bàbá wa ní báyìí kásà lásọ̀rọ̀ ajé ní mẹ́rin pẹ́kọ̀rọ̀ àìtódò tọ̀ sí bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo sọ àìtódò tọ̀ sí òun là ń pé kólúwẹ̀rí kó dọ́ bójú pa afẹ́ tọ̀ bàbá tó dò tọ̀ sí àjọ kìnní látọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ ni èmi ó tọ̀ sílé ẹ̀yin bàbá Adébóyè ẹ̀yin ṣéèkì gbogbo yín tẹ́ wà mọ́rákàs gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ́ pera yín lórí ẹ̀sìn sójú òtì yín ni wọ́n dẹ̀ jẹ́ torí ń tẹ́ ń jẹ ni àbí torí ń tẹ́ fẹ́ jẹ ọdún mẹ́rin ló kù fún yín kí ni ìtumọ̀ dídákẹ́ yín ṣé bí ìlú ṣe wà yìí ṣó dáa ni ṣé bí ìlú ṣe wà yìí ṣó dáa ṣé kájà máa gbàdúrà lẹ́fẹ̀ẹ́ máa sọ fún wa ṣáàdúrà yín gan lè gbà pẹ̀lú òrò tẹ́rù káàkiri tó ń ru òrò káàkiri ẹ̀dẹ̀ dákẹ́ ẹ̀panudé wọn kú ibi ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ẹ̀rí ibi ó easy fún yín láti gba ibi kẹ́ pa ibi mọ́ kẹ́ máa wòran níbi kẹ́ ṣàlàyé ibi ojú òtì yín ojú ògbà yín tì àwọn tí mo dárúkọ wọn as type ni mi ò ní ìran kan bá yín sọ as individuals torí ẹ̀bù wà tó ń tẹ̀ fi lè pè yín lórí tí wọ́n bá máa bá yín sọ ètò ń jó tọrọ ẹ wò ó náà ẹ wò lútẹ tí ń claim pẹ́ ń pariwo nítorí orúkọ Ọlọ́run ẹ wò ó ẹ̀yin fúnra yín ẹ wò ó náà ẹ yẹlú ìwò sójú òtì yín ni ẹ gbó fúnra yín náà kẹ́ wá ṣàlàyé bóyá jẹ́ pé ojú òtì ẹ̀ gbà yín tì àwọn ọba àti ẹ̀gbọ́n wọn kò ti sọ gbóyin di civil servant local government chairman lọ̀gá ọba ńlọ̀gá emir méjì náà kó jọ ní Kánò sí pàpà so but ẹ ti ẹ̀pọ̀nra ẹrú ra yín láṣọ yìí náà ṣé bí ìlú yìí ṣe ń lọ yìí bólẹ́ fẹ́ sá lọ́ngà tí ìlú bá dìdàkudà tán wàá gun Bentley gun Rolls Royce nínú gbogbo crazy traffic nínú gbogbo wàhálà kò tó oríṣiríṣi torí nǹkan máa jẹ ojú dẹ̀ ń bàjẹ́ lọ ẹ̀rí nǹkan kan sọ ṣe rí mo rò pé ibi tá a bọ́rọ̀ ìdè ẹ jẹ́ ká sọ ètò ń jẹ́ òkodoro fúnra wa torí àwọn bàbá wa náà ní ọ̀pọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ kágbọ̀n ṣùgbọ́n àbọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ náà láti wá ń sọ fún yín tó bá ń pè rẹ̀ lọ́mọlúwàbí gbogbo ọmọ Yorùbá gidi dẹ̀ lọ́mọlúwàbí mo fẹ́ kẹ́ ẹ tẹ́ ẹ ti yín bẹ̀lẹ̀ jẹ́ kẹ́ ẹ gbọ́ mi gidi jẹ́ ṣàlàyé ọ̀kan èmi ò ní wípé kí àwọn ènìyàn kan jáde kí wọ́n lọ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa fàjọgbọ̀n wọ́n máa dáná sunlé kò dẹ̀ ṣẹlẹ̀ rí níjọ́ tí kan ti bí èmi sí ilẹ̀ Nàìjíríà yìí wípé àwọn tí ó jáde pé àwọn protest wọn lọ ń sunlé wọn ń sun mọ́tò ìjọba ló máa ń rán wọn jáde tán lọ ń sunlé tán ń sun mọ́tò tá a bá rí Ọlọ́run ṣe ayé social media aláwà eléyìí tí Sanwó-Olú ṣe láláwúsá nígbà ensars tán fi bọ́ọ̀sì ìjọba tí wọ́n fi kọ́ àwọn tọ́ọ̀gì wá sáláwúsá is on video ó wà everywhere lórí internet wọ́n identify inú àwọn ẹni tá à ń wí ọlọ́pàá wẹ́ẹ́fà súnmọ́ wọn bóyá ọlọ́pàá àti ẹ̀tún fún wọn ní escort ni because àtijọba àtọlọ́pàá àti tọ́ọ̀gì wọ́n ti dẹ́yọ kan so èmi ò ní pé káwọn èèyàn jáde kán lọ fàjọ̀gbọ̀n kán bàlújẹ́ kán dàlúrú àwọn èèyàn wa ò dẹ̀ ní irú intention bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣùgbọ́n bí tí ìlú bàjẹ́ dé yìí tó wó epo tó ti ń tún gẹ̀rẹ́gẹ̀rẹ́ lọ sí 1000 tí salary minimum wage tí ò kọjá 70 ẹni tó bá dẹ̀ ní employees tí ìṣèjọba àti san 70,000 yẹn pẹ̀lú gbogbo wàhálà tíjọba ti kó sọ́nà fún yàn gan ó ti dìṣòro ṣé ẹni tó bá ń wo ìlú tó rí bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣé wọn lẹ́tọ̀ọ́ àti fẹ̀hónú wọn hàn ni ẹni tó bá wò ó tó rí wípé fún ọjọ́ ọ̀la fáwọn ọmọ gan wọ́n ti bàjẹ́ wọ́n ti tà wọ́n ń yá owó ọmọ wọ́n ń yáwó nú kólú ẹ̀ wọ́n dẹ̀ ń ná jẹ lórí ìranu lórí ìṣekúṣe kì í ṣe pé wọ́n ń yá owó láti ṣe nǹkan gidi ṣé kò tó kéèyàn fẹ́ òun hàn téèyàn bá ń wo ẹ ẹ wòye tá à ń ra oúnjẹ lénìí ẹ wòye tó jẹ́ bí ọdún kan sẹ́yìn ṣé kò tó kéèyàn fi ẹ̀hónú hàn ni ṣé ọ̀rọ̀ bí ìlú ṣe kan gógó tó kan gógó káti rìn láti ìletò kan sí ìletò míì tó di ìṣòro ṣé kò tó kéèyàn fi ẹ̀hónú ẹ̀ hàn ni eléyìí ò kì í ṣọ̀rọ̀ ọmọ Ìgbò ọ̀rọ̀ ọmọ Nàìjíríà ni gbogbo wa ló kàn èmi ló kàn làwọn sọ lọ́jọ́ kìíní àná àwọn ló kàn láti fìyà jẹ àwọn aráàlú ni wọ́n kún sọ fún wa ẹ̀yin lẹ gbọ́ n tó kan gbogbo wa ń sìn ìyà ni Ọlọ́run má fi jẹ́ kí ìyà kó kan gbogbo wa bá a dẹ̀ ṣe máa kó olóko ẹrú tí wọ́n mú wa lọ la gbọ́dọ̀ máa rò kì í ṣọ̀rọ̀ ọmọ Ìgbò kì í ṣe ọmọ Ìgbò rárá ṣé ọmọ Ìgbò ń lọ sọ́jà mi yàtọ̀ sí tẹ́yìn lọ ni àbí wọ́n ṣe títì mi yàtọ̀ fọmọ Ìgbò àbọ̀mọ Ìgbò ló gbé jígà tó ń já tó ń fọ́ gbogbo títì wa lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ọmọ Ìgbò ló mú wa lẹ́rú ṣé ọmọ Ìgbò ló mú wa lẹ́rú tẹ́ bá fẹ́ gbàṣírí ọmọ olè ẹ dúró kẹ́ gbọ́n gbà tí wọ́n bá ń jà sọmọ Ìgbò ló san $100 million náà ló gba $100 million tó sọ gbogbo àwọn ará free trade zone aláìnílẹ̀ mọ́ gbogbo yeguda kò sí nǹkan tí mo fẹ́ fúnra mi tí mi ò fẹ́ fọ́mọ Ìgbò tí mi ò fẹ́ fọ́mọ Haúsá tí mi ò fẹ́ fọ́mọ Fúlàní tí mi ò fẹ́ fọ́mọ Ìjọ kò sí nǹkan tí mo fẹ́ fúnra mi tí mi ò fẹ́ fọ́mọ nìkejì mi Ọlọ́run má jẹ́ kí ibi kó bá wa èyí tó ń jó tó ń bẹ̀ tí mo fẹ́ kẹ́ dìmú kẹ́ jẹ́ kó yé yín láàárọ̀ yìí kẹ́ ẹ̀ sì gbọ́dọ̀ gbàgbé òní wípé tá a bá fira wa ṣe kan a lè jáde nínú oko ẹrú táwọn ará bíi mú wa wọ̀ àwọn alálẹ̀ wọn á bí yín orí àwọn ọmọ ọlọ́mọ tẹ̀ ń mú lẹ́rú tẹ̀ ń fà lóko ẹrú nítorí ìjẹkújẹ nítorí èèyàn kan á bí yín ẹ wo ògbóró dáadáa ẹ̀rí bí ìlú ṣe kan gógó ẹ̀yin tẹ́ máa jáde láti fẹ̀ ònú yín hàn mo bẹ̀ yín ẹ rántí pé ìjọba tẹ̀ ń dín pẹ̀lú apààyàn ni wọ́n tẹ́ ẹ̀ bá mọ̀ ẹ rántí tí Buratai ṣe ní Kaduna 450 share náà pa 430 share náà pa according to their own panel report ẹran tí n tán ṣe ń Lẹ́kì ní tó worst jù ń pa ọ̀rọ̀ Lẹ́kì ni pé wọ́n tó wá mú ikú àwọn ọmọ ọlọ́mọ náà fi ń justify why táwọn èèyàn ṣe gbọ́dọ̀ jáde protest lọ́tẹ̀ yìí lẹ́yìn tẹ́ pa àwọn èèyàn tẹ́ deny ikú wọn lẹ́yìn tí panel yín confam pé ẹ massacre wọn ẹ tún wá mú ikú wọn ẹ tún wá fi ń parọ́ ẹ tún wá ń lò ó láti ṣàlàyé ibi táwọn èèyàn ṣe gbọ́dọ̀ jáde láti wá protest ẹ̀jẹ̀ gbogbo wọn bí yín láti ìran dé ìran ló máa béèrè lọ́gbọ̀ ẹ̀yin tẹ́ mọ̀ ń papú wọn ọ̀pọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ kágbọ̀n èmi ò ní sọ jù báyìí lọ láàárọ̀ yìí ṣùgbọ́n èèyàn ọmọ Yorùbá ẹ mú àpò ronú yín ẹ gbé níbi tẹ́ súnkọ́ sí oko ẹrú náà mú wa lọ eléyìí ò kì í ṣe pé èèyàn ọjọ́ ta ẹ̀yọ̀ kankan Tinubu ti wọlé èmi ò sí náà tó ní pé kó jáde ṣùgbọ́n ètò ìdìbò wa ètò ìṣèdájọ́ wa bá a ṣe ń ṣèjọba orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà owó epo tó wọ́n gógó, bí security ò ṣe dá, gbogbo àwọn nǹkan wọ̀nyí làwọn ọmọ tó láwọn fẹ́ fi ẹ̀hónú wọn hàn ó wà nínú tó ń béèrè fún. Èyí tèmi gẹ́gẹ́ bí ẹnìkan tí mo align ara mi sí tí mi ò dẹ̀ ní any apology for anybody bá a ṣe ń ṣe ètò ìdìbò wa tó fi máa jẹ́ pé ìbò wa á kúnjú wọn á wúlò, a gbọ́dọ̀ wá nǹkan ṣe sí. Ilé ẹjọ́ wa tó ti dìdàkudà tí temple of justice tó di ilé aṣẹ́wó, a gbọ́dọ̀ wá nǹkan ṣe sí. Ṣùgbọ́n kí eléyìí kì í ṣe ọ̀rọ̀ ọmọ Ìgbò, ọ̀rọ̀ ara wa ni. Bọ́mọ ìyá méjì bá wọlé tí wọ́n bára wọn sọ̀rọ̀ tí wọ́n jáde tí wọ́n rẹ́rìn rọ́nà pa fúnra wọn bẹ̀. Ẹ̀yin ìyá lọ́jà wa, ẹ̀yin bàbá lọ́jà, ẹ̀yin oníṣẹ́ ọwọ́, ọmọdé, àgbà, ẹ bára yín sọ̀rọ̀. Interest Tinubu ò kì í ṣe interest Yorùbá, interest Tinubu ni interest Tinubu. Ẹ ń bá rí jẹ́ ń bẹ̀, ajá wọn tiẹ̀ wọ́n dúró tì láti ṣàjẹjẹ. Interest ẹ ò kì í ṣe interest wa. This is not about the Igbo, kì í ṣọ̀rọ̀ ọmọ Igbo, ọ̀rọ̀ ara wa ni, ìjàgbara ara wa ni. Ire o, ọ̀rọ̀ ajẹ́kọ̀ọ́sẹ̀ kò san wa o, àsanwá sówó, àsanwá sọmọ o, àlàáfíà bàbá ọ̀rọ̀ o. Ire, kò dàbọ̀.
Everybody come and see, I say come and hear, I don carry am come. Better information, superb advertisement, we no get it rival. Oh, to get update and get informed, oh, come to Celestial Half Hour. Celestial Half Hour TV, now we be the best information carrier.